Okay, part two. So that was the transparent condition. And then the opaque condition, as you can see, it's just literally filming them, all filmed simultaneously, so you can't see through this time. And that required some rehearsal, as they say, because it would have been quite easy to collide with each other and other accidents. So they had to rehearse it to get more natural looking patterns of movement. Okay, so the materials. All videos were filmed with a VHS recorder, essentially, and were digitized and edited using a nonlinear digital editing system. In other words, they filmed it and edited it in separate opaque style video recording. So in a separate opaque style video recording, so another solid one, the gorilla walked from right to left into a live basketball passing event, stopped in the middle of the players, and as the action continued all around it, turned to face the camera and thumped its chest. So and then resumed walking. So that's the one that you see on YouTube. That's a separate one. Now, I think the reason for them doing that is because I'm guessing they wanted to add something that was even more obvious, even more dynamic, that a gorilla starts beating its chest in front of you and you really should spot it, but people, again, didn't particularly. So, it's a more dynamic condition. So they did that as an extra add-on. Who were the sample? 228 participants, so referred to as observers throughout the original study. Almost all undergraduate students. Okay, so they're not obviously observers as we would understand observers, because that would be researchers, but they were observing the film. Each participant either volunteered to take part without compensation, so they either didn't get money, or they did get a candy bar, or they were paid a single fee, but if they participated in a larger testing session in an unrelated experiment. Okay, so they didn't get anything in particular. They didn't get any money for this particular thing. But if they carried on to do it, they could. Candy bar would be good though. Data from 36 participants were discarded, so results were from 192. Now there is a breakdown in a second of why those results were discarded. These were equally distributed, so the remaining ones were equally distributed across the 16 conditions. For the controlled observation, so this is that additional one, 12 different participants watched the video of the gorilla thumping its chest. So just an additional 12 doing that extra condition. Procedure. 21 experimenters tested the participants. To ensure the standardization of the procedures, a written protocol was devised and reviewed with the experiments before it began. So the written protocol will be things like standardized instructions and how the experimenters should carry it out. So the 21 experimenters tested, being the experimenters, are going to be research assistants or students of Simmons and Chabris, but they're going to be going around and probably showing the video to their friends or volunteers. All participants tested individually and gave informed consent. Although informed consent, not really, because they can't tell them about the unexpected event, but again, that's not going to harm them in any way. Before viewing the videotape, participants were told they would be watching two teams of 3 players passing basketballs, in which they should pay attention to either the team in black or the team in white. Okay, so simple instructions, those are your standardized instructions. You should pay attention to them, and then, if you're in the easy condition, you had to keep a silent mental count of the number of passes made, just the total number of passes by the team that you've been given, the white or the black team. Or, for the hard condition, they were asked to keep count of the silent mental count of the number of bounce passes and aerial passes. So you're having to do 2 things there. Bounce pass is one that bounces across the ground to the person, and aerial pass is one that goes through the air between 2 people. Okay, so the hard condition is much harder. I think I'd struggle to do that just counting on two hands. After viewing the videotape and performing the monitoring task, participants were immediately asked to write down their counts on paper. So immediately after, write them down on paper. Okay. They were asked the following questions. So after all of that, while you were doing the counting, did you notice anything unusual in the video? Did you notice anything other than the 6 players? Did you see a gorilla or a woman carrying an umbrella walking across the screen? After any yes response, the participants were asked to provide details of what they noticed. If at any point a participant mentioned the unexpected event, the remaining questions were skipped. So if for question 1, did you notice anything unusual? They went, yep, a gorilla. Then they didn't bother asking these additional questions. After questioning, participants were asked if they had previously participated in a similar experiment. Now, this was important because they're going to get rid of their results if they have. Had they heard of such an experiment? Had they heard of the general phenomenon? And if they'd said yes, they were replaced and their data was discarded. So they got another participant to replace that participant. Participants were debriefed. This included replaying the videotape on request. Okay, so you naturally would, and they probably did ask to have it replayed. If I'd just said to you, there was a gorilla just then, you'd say, where? So you'd replay it again and show them what happened. Each testing session lasted for 5 to 10 minutes. So, key findings. So the 36 participants, first of all, that were discarded for some of these reasons. They already knew about the phenomenon, so that was 14 of them. They reported losing count of the passes. That was 9 of them. Passes were incomplete or inaccurate. That was 7 of them. Sorry, passes were incomplete or inaccurately recorded. Answers could be clearly interpreted, could not be clearly interpreted, so that's from what they've said or what they've written. If the total pass counts were over 3 standard deviations away from the mean, so if they were way off their guess, then that might indicate that they hadn't done what they'd been asked, that they hadn't watched all the passes. So one of them was way off, so obviously hadn't done as they were told. And the remaining 192 were distributed equally across the 16 conditions. So remember, they're recruiting additional people when these are withdrawn to get up to those 12 per condition for the 2x2x2x2 design. Black and white team, opaque and transparent, hard and easy, gorilla and umbrella. Well done me for remembering. Okay, key findings. Now, this table, to draw findings from just looking at this table, can be a little bit tricky. It's easier to just look at the written findings, so I'll show you in a sec. But just to spot some things, remember this is the percentage of participants that actually noticed the unexpected event. Okay, so the higher the number, so here 100% of people in the umbrella condition in the white team in the easy task did spot the umbrella woman. So something's going on there where they did all see the umbrella. But apart from that, we start dropping. The umbrella woman is being spotted generally more than the gorilla, but you see some really low numbers in spotting the gorilla. Because the black team were wearing black and the gorilla was in black, then perhaps that's why more spotted the gorilla in the black team. Whereas if you're following the white team, you've kind of trained your eyes to not notice the black team, and that includes the black gorilla. So the lowest numbers are there. So you can see how that manipulation did impact them, of whether you were wearing white or black, whether you were following the white or black team. So generally, a lot of people, and this is the overall key finding to this, a lot of people missed the unexpected event. So Key findings: out of 192 participants across all conditions, 54% noticed the unexpected event and 46% failed to notice the unexpected event. And although that is, you could argue, well, that shows that most people, the majority of people, do spot unexpected events. When you start breaking the conditions down, then that's not true for particular conditions. But also, if you said 46% of people are going to fail to notice a gorilla that walks into this room now, then you would say that's quite unusual. So here we go. More participants noticed the unexpected event in the opaque condition. So more noticed it in the opaque condition. So the transparent condition was more difficult because you could see you could see through people, because it wasn't as clear. Then it was a more difficult thing. Perhaps your eyes had to focus on your team even more in the opaque, in the transparent condition. So the opaque, it was easier for people to spot the unexpected event. So there was that difference between that independent variable overall. Even in the opaque condition, though, a substantial proportion, 33%, failed to report the event despite its visibility and repeated questions about it. So still a high number of people who didn't spot it, and more participants noticed the unexpected event in the easy condition. So it was easier, no surprises, in the easy condition when you've got to just count the passes straight up, than the hard condition when you've got to count the different types of passes. So your visual attention is even more focused in the hard condition than in the easy condition, meaning that you don't spot the unexpected event as easily. And the effect of the task difficulty was greater in the transparent condition. So in just the transparent condition, in the see-through condition, whether you had the easy or hard task had a bigger impact. So 56% to 27% compared to 71 to 62% in the opaque condition, showing that you had a much greater difference when you had, that's a bar chart, apologies, a much greater difference in the transparent condition compared to the solid opaque condition. So it had a bigger impact on the findings when you're in the transparent condition. The umbrella woman was noticed more often than the gorilla, 65% to 44%. So she was seen to be more obvious than the gorilla. This relation held regardless of the video type, monitoring, or attended team. So that was a consistent finding. The gorilla was noticed more by participants who attended to the actions of the black team than those who attended. So within the gorilla condition itself, if you were on the black team, you noticed it more than those who were watching the white team, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, however, little difference between those attending to the black team and those attending to the white team in terms of noticing the umbrella woman. So not a great difference there in those two conditions. From the controlled observation, the gorilla banging his chest is an opaque condition, and it was very similar to the opaque walking event rather than banging the chest. Very similar findings, so the findings are just backed up by that controlled observation. So on to the conclusions. We have an inattentional blindness for dynamic events. We cannot spot things even when they're a gorilla banging its chest walking through our visual field. Individuals fail to notice outgoing and highly salient but unexpected events if they're engaged in something else. So if you're watching something else, if you're focused on something, you don't notice other things. Like if you're looking at your phone, you won't notice what's going on in the room. The level of inattentional blindness depends on the difficulty of the task. If you're driving down the motorway and it's a very busy motorway, you're not going to spot as many cars or as many unexpected events. Individuals are more likely to notice unexpected events if they are visually similar to the events that they're paying attention to. So the black team, the black gorilla, objects can pass through the spatial extent of an attention focus and still not be seen if they're not being attended to. So the gorilla can walk right through the scene and we still can't notice it. It goes right through our consciousness, and there's no conscious perception without attention. So we do not remember things. We do not consciously become aware of something unless we pay attention to it. And that is the study by Simon and Chabris. Thanks for watching.